Hi, I'm Daniel Andrews, owner and creator of the DAN Show, and welcome to my breakdown of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you're new to my channel, I just got one simple question to ask you. Do you want to talk football? Because if so, you're in the right place. This is the only thing I do. There is this button right around here. See it? See it? See it? Bam! Hit that button. Become one of the greatest people on planet Earth. Now, here's how my breakdown is going to go. I'm going to talk about what I like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then I'm going to talk about what I don't like about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but stick around to the very end where I break down the Vegas over-under and if I am going to put action down on the Steelers. So let's just kick this off with what I like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's start with the obvious. You have Big Ben coming back, and this is big for so many different reasons. Part of it is Mason Rudolph, who I was extremely high on coming out of Oklahoma State. I thought that he was going to have a really great season or maybe be the successor. Just didn't pan out. But here's the thing. Last year, the Steelers' offense was one of the worst. They were 27th in points, 31st in passing yards, 29th in rushing yards, 30th overall. And take a look at last year. Or, I'm sorry, 2018. They were 9-6-1. They missed the playoffs. They were 6th in points, 2nd in passing yards, 31st in rushing yards. The Steelers do miss Le'Veon Bell, but let's just be honest. And they're 4th overall in yards. Well, what's the one thing that was really different? Well, you don't have Roethlisberger. Even you have to go back to 2013 when they weren't top 10 in points. So for the last 6 years, top 10 scoring offense. Take Ben Roethlisberger out, 27th. So, there's a few other factors, but bottom line, having Big Ben back is huge. You get he's probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the National Football League. He comes back. Remember, he was injured in that first game, so he should come back fresh. He should come back healthy. The Steelers offense, if it gets back to being a top 10 scoring offense, watch out NFL. Second thing I like about the Steelers is the Devin Bush, Minkah Fitzpatrick trades. Now, for those of you who don't remember, Devin Bush, the Steelers went from 20th to 10th. It was a risky trade because it's very rare. I've been obsessed with the NFL draft for over 30 years, and it's very rare that a team trades up to a top 10 pick for an inside linebacker. It's extremely rare. And also, a lot of people thought Devin White was the better pick. Devin Bush went 10th, Devin White went 11th, and that's the subject for debate. But Devin Bush added something to this defense that really, really missed and had huge impact. Didn't go to a Pro Bowl, wasn't an all-pro player, but this guy looks like he's going to be a cornerstone for the Steelers defense for a long time. He was an obvious playmaker and a big improvement. Minkah Fitzpatrick you traded for before the third week of the season, and this was a guy, if you don't know his background, is that he played both corner and free safety at Alabama. Going into the draft, a lot of people thought that he would have been a corner safety, and then some mock drafts just had him listed as a DB. It was kind of debatable. Well, his best position was really free safety, but he has the athleticism to play corner. So his first season with Miami did okay, but then they went ahead and had a new coaching change, and they wouldn't put him as a box safety, which is really like putting a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't really fit. He didn't like it, and the Dolphins organization was like, hey, if you want to get out of here, leave. And he's like, hey, get me the hell out of here. You're not using me right. And it makes sense. Normally when a player says you're not using me right, it's usually him posturing, for to try and get more money. But in Minkah Fitzpatrick's case, he wasn't being used right. I mean, this is not a box safety, so using him as a box safety didn't make a lot of sense. So Dolphins got rid of him, goes with the Steelers. Steelers already have a box safety in Terrell Edmunds. He ends up being an all-pro safety. And keep in mind, he just joined the team after the season started, so it's logical to assume that he might even be better this year. But this Bush-Fitzpatrick duo were both risky trades that looked to pay off because they added a lot of speed and athleticism to the defense, which is the third thing that I love about the Pittsburgh Steelers is this defense. This defense was 5th in points, 5th in yards, 1st in rushing touchdowns, and that's important because the rushing defense did give up some yards, but they were 1st in rushing touchdowns. Look at the division you're in. You got the Ravens who ran for 5,000 yards every game, a little off. Nick Chubb, if he would have played after Derrick Henry, he'd be the NFL rushing leader. And then you got Joe Mixon, who I've been saying could be a dark horse candidate for NFL MVP. So you're going against two great running backs, a great running team, and who's the team that gives up the fewest rushing touchdowns out of the NFL? It's Pittsburgh Steelers. They only gave up 7. That's an absurd number especially when you look at your division. I mean, you can make a strong case that if you play the Ravens, Browns, and Bengals twice a season, you may give up 7 rushing touchdowns in those 6 games alone. 7 for the whole year. That's very, very impressive, especially when you're third in passing yards. So you can't really throw against the Steelers, and you can't score rushing touchdowns on them. That's really impressive. That's extremely impressive. Oh, yeah, they led the NFL in sacks, 54 sacks. So they're going to get after the quarterback. The secondary's solid. Oh, yeah, and if you get in red zone, you can't score on them. That's a very definition of a good defense, and I can argue that defense will be better in 2020. That's debatable, but they're still top 5. You have easily one of the best defenses in the National Football League. The fourth thing I like about the Steelers is Mike Tomlin, and he's been the head coach there for 13 years. He's had 3 8-8 seasons and 10 winning seasons. He's never once had a losing season. And also last year, even though they didn't have a good offensive season, they kept offensive coordinator and they have the same defensive coordinator. Unlike a lot of franchises, take a look at Cleveland Browns, you have coaching continuity and it helps. I can make a strong argument that by the way, put a comment below and argue with me if you want. I can make a strong case that Mike Tomlin's had a better coaching career than oh God, I had brain freak. I'm sorry, Bill Cowher. I wasn't going to say this at first. I'm just kind of. Bill Cowher was in Pittsburgh for 15 years. He did have a losing season. As a matter of fact, he had 2. Tomlin hasn't. Who's a better coach, Tomlin or Cowher? Put a comment below. But bottom line, they kept the offensive coach even though they had a bad offensive season. They show a lot of coaching continuity, and that's something that's very important. It leads me to the 5th and final thing I love about the Pittsburgh Steelers is that this is a first-rate organization. From top to bottom, you will find this might be the best run NFL organization there is, and it's really funny because they have a very unique way of doing things. They keep their coaches for a very long time. It's kind of a mom and pop shop. They like to draft players, develop their draft picks. They don't add a lot in free agency. They do make risky trades, which paid off for Devin Bush and Minkah Fitzpatrick as of right now. Ryan Shazier, they actually kept him on the roster, and hopefully, knock on wood, and that's a story. It's bigger in football, but it really surprises me more teams don't model the Pittsburgh Steelers. The only one I can think of off the top of my head would be the Cincinnati Bengals, which hasn't had nearly the same success. But I'm not a Steelers fan. Let's be very clear here. I am not a Steelers fan. I would love to watch Steelers go 2-14. I would laugh, but anybody who says Steelers don't have a well-run organization does not know what they're talking about. So just kind of to recap the 5 things I like about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got Big Ben coming back. The trades for Bush and Fitzpatrick seemed to really pay off, and it added to them being, the third point, one of the best defenses in the National Football League. Coaching staff, first rate. Leave a comment below. Who's a better coach, Cowher or Tomlin? And this is without question one of the best organizations, not only in football, but just professional sports overall. Kudos to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What a great organization they have. Now, let's talk about what I don't like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, the first thing I don't like was the offense. Now, keep in mind, you are getting Ben Roethlisberger back, but you didn't add a quarterback in the draft or in the offseason. So, Mason Rudolph really didn't get it done. And Devin Hodges, his ceiling's backup quarterback. One of these days, I'm going to have to do a video of how great it is to be a backup quarterback because it is the best job in America. But ultimately, they didn't add anybody to this roster. So, Ben Roethlisberger's always had some injury issues. Now, if he can play, let's just say 12 games at the same Ben Roethlisberger level, you're more than likely making the playoffs. But ultimately, it does scare me that you didn't draft or sign a quarterback. And Ben Roethlisberger is 147. So, I'm joking, obviously. But his age is a problem. but I do like that he got injured early, so he should enter the season at 100%, but banking on Roethlisberger to be 100% for 16 games is just flat silly. Second thing I didn't like is you only had one draft pick in the top 100. You only had one, and you used it on Clace Chapel, and I hated that pick. So Alex Highsmith and the two Maryland kids that drafted in the 4th and 6th round, I love those picks. That's why I gave the Steelers a C-. But Chase Claypool, this was a terrible pick. And for those of you who don't know, this is a wide receiver out of Notre Dame who went to the combine at I think it's 6'4", 238 and ran a 4.42. But if you watch him at Notre Dame, and I watched him several times, I keep in mind Notre Dame's technically not a Power 5 school, but it's a big-time program. He never looked like a first, second, or third round player. I wasn't even sure he was an NFL player, to be honest with you. I watched him a couple times. I didn't really see anything that made him stand out. Now, the size speed is off the charts, but DK Metcalf was similar size speed, and he went at the last pick in the 2nd round. Difference between DK Metcalf and Chase Claypool is DK Metcalf looked like a man among boys in SEC competition. Chase Claypool never looked anywhere near that at Notre Dame, and they don't play the same type of schedule an SEC team does. So I didn't like this, and then I heard, well, he may play tight end. Well, that emphasizes the point. You have one pick in the top 100 picks, and you're taking a guy, well, maybe he plays tight end. Well, then why'd you sign Eric Ebron? So I think he's going to play receiver, but here's the thing. You drafted James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson as in the last 3 years in the first 3 rounds. So this is the 4th consecutive year you've drafted a wide receiver either in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round. Yes, you miss Antonio Brown. So I don't like this pick at all because, number one, he's a project. Number two, he's a receiver that you're going to need lots of work with. Let's look at the draft real fast here. All right. Cam Akers, the running back that the Rams chose 3 picks later, he comes in, he's probably your number 1 running back. If nothing else, he's sharing time because he provides speed and explosiveness that you need. J.K. Dobbins, who went 6 picks later to Baltimore, you watch how good he does against the Steelers defense. You're going to wish you had him. He provides a completely different dynamic. Van Jefferson, Denzel Mims, player I'm really high on. Both these receivers were available later. You could have chose either one of these receivers. These guys would have contributed day one. I'm not really sure a project player does that. And then I'm going to touch base on this a little later in as a third thing I don't like, but look at these offensive line projects. These guys could probably start day one. You could have taken Damian Lewis, Jonah Jackson, Matt Hennessy, Lloyd Cushenberry. All these guys would probably be day one starters. Zach Moss, Buffalo. Zach Moss I wouldn't have liked for Pittsburgh because they have running backs very similar. Benny Snell, I was really high on, kind of a similar type player. But they needed somebody with speed and athleticism, which you got in Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, players that Pittsburgh should have drafted. I just talked about the quarterback. Why didn't you take Jalen Hurts? That was the player I thought Pittsburgh was going to take. To me, that was a no-brainer. Take a poor man's Lamar Jackson, and here's a guy who sits, and then he plays a little bit in wild card. You can get creative. He's the guy who I predicted the Steelers to take, and then you don't have to worry about the backup position. And the best part is he helps you day one. I cannot emphasize how much I hate it. Now, keep in mind, here's a guy who's built like Calvin Johnson, but he didn't play like Calvin Johnson. If he turns out to be Calvin Johnson, I will be the first person to eat my words. I have no problem admitting I'm wrong, but I hated this draft pick. I gave the Steelers a C-. I loved some of their picks later on in the draft, but I really didn't like taking Claypool, especially when you only have one pick in the top 100. If they had multiple picks, then I don't have a problem with it, but keep in mind you could have helped fix this offensive line, which is the third thing I'm going to talk about, is that this team shows a lot of age. When I say fix the offensive line, I'm not saying the offensive line's bad, but Villanova, he's 32. He's going to be 32 like week 2 or 3 of the season. Wisniewski's 31. Both Ireland and ESPN has him as the starting guard. He was signed late in the season by Kansas City, and in Kansas City didn't have no intentions of signing him back, even though they need some. That's another story completely. But here's a guy that was signed as the Chiefs' fourth guard, had a lot of injuries in that interior offensive line. Then after Super Bowl, it's like, hey man, enjoy the ring. But they didn't even try to really re-sign this guy, and he's going to be your starter. And he's 31. Pouncey's 31. DeCastro's 30. Your best defensive player, and of course this is debatable. I think it's Cam Hayward, but by the way, you tell me who's the Steelers' best defensive. Could it be Fitzpatrick? Maybe. I think it's Cameron Hayward. He's 31. I'm going to say Pro Bowl because I didn't think he was a Pro Bowl caliber corner, but Joe Hayden made the Pro Bowl. He's 31. And bottom line, your offensive line average age is over 30. And you have key defensive players that are over 30. I saw something that the Steelers had the oldest roster in the NFL, or at least the oldest starting roster, and I couldn't find it, so I can't prove it, but I mean, this is, and Ben Roethlisberger, remember, is 147 years old. Of course, I'm joking, but this is a team that really needed an influx of youth. Now, keep in mind, they used that first pick in the draft for Fitzpatrick. Great move. But for a team that really needed an influx of youth and talent, they really didn't get it. This is a team that you never want to be an aging team. Now, keep in mind, your expectations are high, so having a veteran team that you're expecting to make the playoffs and push for the Super Bowl, I want to be very clear. If you're the Steelers and you get into the playoffs, nobody wants to play you because the defense is good and you have a Hall of Fame quarterback on the other side. So, all right. So let's recap what I don't like. Number one, the lack of offensive production last year, and you're expecting Ben Roethlisberger to fix that. So that's kind of 1 and 1A, but let's just say lack of offensive production last year. I did not like the draft, and I'm not just bashing Claypool. I mean, ultimately, you had, maybe I am just bashing Claypool, a project player as your only pick in the top 100. I didn't like that. And then 3, this is a team that's got some age and really needs an influx of youth. So those are the 3 things I don't like about the Pittsburgh Steelers. But what did I say? Hang around till the end. We'll talk about the Vegas over-under. And if I am going to put action down on the Steelers, the over-under is 9. And if you take the over, it's negative 125, which means you have to wager $125 to win 100. The under is plus 105, which means that same $100 wager will win you 105. 9, I think, is the perfect number. I think that they could be about 9-7 team. If Roethlisberger plays in 14 games, then easily over. The team talent overall is over. I just question when you have an aging team, when do they hit that wall? Is this going to be a year where they have a slew of injuries besides Roethlisberger? So even though my instinct would tell me to take the over, I probably wouldn't because I don't like negative 125. But there's a lot of question marks about the Steelers. Are they talented enough to win 9 easily? Here's another thing I want you to think about. Now, last year they went 3-3 in the division. But they could easily go 4-2. I remember that game at Cleveland. I bet 300 on Pittsburgh. I lost that. Hey, I admit when I lose. I have no problems doing that. But more than likely, you're going to go 4-2 in the division. Let's just, that's fair. You know, usually you split with Baltimore. You're probably going to sweep Cincinnati. And I mean, let's just say you sweep with Cleveland, which is unlikely. 4-2 if you're going to take the over, okay? Here's my big question, okay? The first 5 games at New York Giants on Monday night. I might put action on that game because the last time I looked, I think Giants were 2.5 point dog, and I'd like Pittsburgh big, or Pittsburgh's 2.5 point favorite, whatever. Next 2 games are home games against Broncos and Texans, at Tennessee, and then a home game against Philly. How they finish? Because these are good teams. I mean, Philly, Tennessee, Texans, these are all playoff teams. The Broncos are improved. The Giants are kind of interesting. I think they should win that game. So here's the deal. You have 1 win against the Giants, 3 home games against three pretty good teams. And then at Tennessee. That's a winnable game. It really is. I'm looking at that 5-game stretch as the most important stretch if you're putting action down. Because if you're taking over, I think you need a minimum of 3-2. Okay? You could go 4-1. You could go 2-3. But I think you're going to go 3-2. And then I think you're going to win 4 games in the division. Here's an interesting stretch of their schedule. They play at... Here, I'm gonna actually let me look at this in a little more detail. Okay, you have a bye after Baltimore, and you play at Dallas after a bye. Okay. After that game, which is winnable because you have a bye, Cincinnati at home, at Jacksonville, Baltimore at home, and then home again. And by the way, that Baltimore game, that's that Thanksgiving game, so you have a little extra rest before you play Washington at home. Even if you lose that Baltimore game, that's a 3-1 stretch. And that Dallas game, after a bye, you could even count that as a 4. So, yeah, you're using 2 of those divisional wins, but that gets you, that takes you over. Did I do my math right? 3 plus 4, 2 division games. So, no, that takes you exactly to 9. That takes you, that was a little confusing, but basically I just got 9 wins for you right there. And then, keep in mind, all you need to do is just win another game. So, oh, wow. I think you have a home game against Indianapolis, a road game against Buffalo. That you got to win one of those. In that case, you have 10. But anyway, I just did 9 right there. I am not going to put action down on the Steelers, but if you are dead set on putting action down, I hate negative 125, so I would take the over. If this jumps up to 9.5, and I can get a positive number, I'm actually taking it under. I'll roll the dice on under. It'll be a small amount, but because to me, Pittsburgh just screams 9-7, but they got the talent of a team that can do much better, so that's why I recommend over. I'm not going to take it because I don't like negative 125. So that's just my thing. So listen, hey, leave a comment below. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Share this video with your friends. Please help get this community to grow because the world needs to just talk football right now. And ultimately, your opinion's important, not mine. I'm giving you my opinion, but I want to hear from you. What do you have to say? Let's talk about it. Now, listen, tomorrow I'm going to break down the Chicago Bears. So, hey, have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.